As people are coming in, I'm going to put the link in the chat again. This is a link to my slides. It's through Genially, and it's an interactive platform. So we'll have everybody click in and open up the slides on their own computers, because that'll give them access to that interactive component. So, and I'll keep popping that in the chat for y'all. And kind of get moving when we're just after 11 here. Okay. All right, so it's 11. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'm kind of monitoring the admitting people as well. I'm putting in the chat a link for you. And I keep putting it in again because I'm pretty sure Zoom doesn't let you see the links. Oh, the link in the list of sessions takes you to an ELA slideshow. That is my presentation for tomorrow. This one the link in our chat should take you directly to the more interactive platform. So hopefully that we can get the PDF on the session link shifted over. I think Ryan's on, so maybe Ryan can make sure to get that switched over, because there were 2 PDFs. But this link should.
Sorry, give us 2 minutes.
Yeah, no worries. But the link in the chat is the correct link to take you to the slide. So you should see the AI PD on that. And I keep putting it in the chat because I just want to make sure everybody has access to it. All right. And then we'll go ahead and get started. I also love to see people's faces. So if you are willing to show me your smiling face, that would be wonderful. Because I like to talk to people. And Zoom is weird. So Ryan, do you need to say anything, or should I just get started, or?
Take it away.
All right.
Yeah, take it away.
All right, I'm going to continue admitting people here. Yay, faces. Okay, so welcome to this session on AI PD and how to kind of use PD to help all teachers get ready for AI or use AI or feel comfortable with AI. And I use that word all to kind of embrace some of our never AI people who are always a little bit of a challenge. So hopefully this will give you some strategies, some things I've done with teachers, and I have like the whole gamut that I've worked with to get you ready to be able to kind of prepare your teachers, because ultimately our students are going to be growing up in an AI-infused world, and they're going to have to be able to use it and use it productively as a tool, as opposed to using it in a way that's replacing themselves or putting themselves farther behind where everything is going. So hello, if you want to say hi in the chat and let us know, or let me know where you're all at, that would be awesome. That way I can kind of just know who you are and where you're from. And in that kind of segue, I'm going to start by introducing you to who I am, and then talk a little bit about why a lot of people are very hesitant about AI. We've probably heard quite a lot of these things. And then I kind of want to talk about some like principles of PD, and then give you some example activities. And then hopefully there'll be some time for us to talk. And then I'll say thank you. So that's kind of my index for you. So who am I? I am an educator with about 17 years of classroom experience. I'm a national board certified teacher and an ISTE certified educator. I have a whole bunch of other things on this slide that I have done in the ed tech world. I also then took, because I like to play with AI, I took the same prompt and put it into 3 different image generators, and gave myself 3 different avatars, but then that's actually me. And then you can always access me via these links if you want. But I'm really passionate about AI. I'm excited to talk to you all about it, and I do think it's pretty accessible to teachers, even if they're hesitant or fearful. So couple things that I like to just go over with for you ahead of time, right? I always just like to make some agreements, like we'll assume a positive intent from everyone here, like we're here to learn, and we all care about students and education. We're going to engage, ask questions, lean in, take care of your needs. So like if you need to use the restroom, just go. Do what you need to do, and then give yourself and others grace as we're kind of navigating if you were in the keynote, a bit of a freight train / scary dragon train, depending on where we're at in her images. Some goals, I'd love to together explore reasons why educators can be hesitant regarding AI, look at some principles that characterize good PD and apply it to AI education, and then kind of think about the skills that students and teachers need to thrive in an AI-infused world and how we can kind of manage that. Um, so couple different protocols that I like to use a lot, particularly in Zoom. I like the waterfall protocol. Hopefully you all are familiar with that. And we're going to try it here in just a second. So the waterfall protocol is everybody types something in the chat and then they all hit go at the same time. And then it just creates this big cascade. And I like to do this in AI with an emoji as to how we're feeling about AI right now. And that's always gets some really interesting ones. So Zoom has this nice little emoji in the chat, and you can say, I want to add an emoji, and you can pick your emoji, but don't hit go yet. You just pick your emoji, and then I'm going to count us down, and we're all going to hit go at the same time. Are we ready to try it? Okay, so everybody pick your emoji. I'll give you a couple seconds, and then we'll count down. In 3, 2, 1, send your emoji. Nice. All right. So we got some good ones here. We've got a little like quizzical ghost. Some like, I'm not sure. I like the face. I get that one a lot. Thumbs up. Cool sunglasses. Strength. Nice. I like to see that. Little nerdy. Little sweating, but we're, possibly there. So that's good. Yeah. So I love to get immediate reactions from teachers. And one of the principles that I have with if anytime we're kind of talking about something like AI that can be really emotionally driven for a lot of teachers, is I like to just get some of that initial ideas out. Like, how are we feeling today? What is the emotional kind of resonance that we're having here? Because I think that names what we need to name in order to be able to kind of address it and support teachers on their journey. The other one that I like is a 3-2-1 protocol, and I'll show you an activity that has that in breakout rooms where you kind of give them like think about 3 things, then 2 things, then 1 thing in terms of questions that help you kind of get people talking about certain things. And the other thing I like to do is always give like a way for you to interact and kind of track and engage kind of in a back channel manner. So the little push pin on any of the slides are going to take you, and I'll click it, to a Padlet. So I have a Padlet board where you can add reflection ideas, thoughts. Sometimes we can do kind of a back channel discussion, and I find that that can be really helpful for teachers as we're kind of helping them navigate AI. So you'll see this little push pin show up, and that is available to you all. And that I often offer that to teachers when I'm doing a PD for them. Okay. All right. So who's your audience? That's like the number one thing we want to know, right? And we've got a range. And so I've made little codes for each of my slides, and I will also do a share again here just to make sure that everybody has the link to the Genially. But on this page, I've kind of tried to say, okay, like we've got our little paper airplane people who aren't ready to like actually go up in a big airplane by themselves and like fly the AI. They just want to kind of fold the paper airplane. Then I've got the like, okay, I can get on the airplane people who are like open. And then I've got the early adopters or the innovators or people who are more engaged and interested. And that's going to be the kind of rocket ship. Like we're ready to kind of go into space here. And so I'll label activities with this key so that you can know like what might work with different groups depending on your audience. Okay. So that's what those are. All right. So you can type in the chat, you can feel free to unmute, but why are most people hesitant? What are they like? What's a hesitation that people have? Fear of tech. Yes, Kara, definitely. I kind of hinted at it a little bit with Yoda here, right? There is this fear, right? And what do we think is like the number one fear that teachers have about tech? Oh, loss of control. Yeah. Mm. It's another thing. Yes. I have to learn another thing. I have to shift how I teach. I have to adjust my approach. Yeah. Possibilities for cheating. Definitely. Yes. How do I control that? I'm behind. Yes. Oh, who's watching me? Yes. That data privacy. Yes. We like to know what we're doing. We like to be the ones who are in control and in charge and knowledgeable. And then, yeah, like, can I do this with my students? How is screen time affecting them? Yeah. And I think these are all rooted in a lot of things that about teachers and teaching that are really important, right? Like, I want my students to learn. I don't want them to replace themselves. I don't want to be replaced. And I also don't want to feel like I can't do my job well or know how to do my job. I want my kids to be safe. I care about my students. I want them to have a healthy balance between technology and screens and their day-to-day in-person life. And I think a lot of the first step with hesitant teachers is really to start acknowledging these fears and like giving them a space to vocalize them, to process them, and then some ways to really have thoughtful professional discussions around those fears. And so that's kind of a lot of the way I design PD and the way I think about trying to address PD with hesitant teachers is to kind of I'm a little cheeky as a personality, so you'll hopefully get a piece of that. I like gifts a lot. But I also want to give them space to just be able to be honest, right? About what are the realities, what are the things we fear, what are the things we want to be really intentional about so that we can do this well and we don't feel like we don't know what we're doing or we're overwhelmed or we're getting replaced. And so I think the number one thing I hear, number one is from teachers is this like, will the robots replace us, right? Like, is this something that's going to um become a part of like who we are and like I'm not going to be necessary anymore. And so I think also showing how using AI actually it doesn't shift teaching. It does. It's going to shift teaching in really large ways, but there are essential components of being a teacher that I think it can't shift at its core. And so even just thinking about like, how does this thing I've always been doing look in an AI kind of environment? And so I think sometimes just being able to process that with them can be really helpful. One of the things I love to do, and this is an activity, and we can kind of play around with a little bit. So this is why I wanted you to have the Genially up yourself. So this is good for people who are starting out. This is good for people who are kind of already a little bit on the bandwagon. But basically, these are 6 quotations, and they are about technology, some sort of growth in technology. And they're kind of expressing a fear in terms of technology. And what I have people do is to kind of start exploring and pick a quote and try to figure out, what is this about? So I like the first one a lot. It will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written, calling things to remembrance no longer from within themselves, but by means of external marks. You can unmute or you can pop in the chat. Who do you think this is from, and what technology are they talking about? Anybody? Oh, paper. Good guess. Google. Okay. Books. Okay. Yeah. So on this slide, and this is through Genially, you can click directly on the quotation, and what it'll do is it'll pop up who said it. So this is Plato, and he is writing about the written word as opposed to an oral discussion. So I think this is fascinating, right? Because this is a fear that I think all of us can really understand and resonate with and see in a lot of other technology that's much more like close to our time frame. And so what I ask the teachers to do when I'm in a PD, and what I'm going to let you kind of think about, and you're welcome to put it in the Padlet, is like, what is his fear? What's the thing he's worried about in terms of this new technology? And then, was his fear realized? Like, is this something where he actually like feared something that happened? And even if it was realized, like, did writing bring opportunities to humanity that weren't like apocalyptic necessarily, but offered some different paths forward? Okay. And I think just really wrestling with some of these like fears that are kind of innate as a part of the human condition when we're faced with paradigm shifts, I think can be really helpful way to kind of open up some of that discussion and then be able to say like, okay, so when we talk about AI, we want to talk about like, what's our fear? What's an opportunity that we have, and what's the kind of like balance that we can strike between being cautious and careful, but also seeing the opportunities that are available to us. These are kind of fun as well in terms of like this one, the horrible massive, and I had to do dots there because it would give it away, that keeps on growing might lead us to fall back into barbarism. This was a quote about the printing press and the proliferation of books, which I find to be an interesting one. I think we can all pick out this one. We aren't going to always have a what in our pocket. Does anybody know? Although we all do. A laptop, a calculator, yes. And we all do actually have them in our pockets, right? But yes, so this is going to be like teachers and parents in the 70s about calculators. This one is obviously all of us about Google and the like rise of the internet. This one is chess players in the 90s, and then of course we have Go as the AI bot that was able to beat Go. Interestingly, Dan Fitzpatrick said in a webinar I was in that we figured out how to beat the AI at Go, and it was a combination of the human brain and the AI together playing an AI that was able to beat the AI, which I thought was really interesting, this idea of like combining us, right? And then this one, this idea of the removal of skilled to unskilled in the assembly line, which I think a lot of us can't really imagine modern um, manufacturing without. And so really interesting. So this is an activity that I really enjoy kind of playing around with teachers to kind of get some of those fears out, and to really process and frame them in a way as like, yes, we have fears, but what are our opportunities as well? And, are fears always going to be the catastrophe that we think they are or not, right? And just really be able to have those discussions. The other thing that I have with this activity that is helpful and fun to play around with, and I think School AI is going to be on after lunch in one of the device or like tool sessions, but I created a session, like a sidekick session that you can use if you want to play around with designing a chat bot that is giving you an ability to interact and talk about technological shifts as like a thought partner, particularly around these. So it's been directed to ask you questions and kind of help you process if you are interested in jumping in there. What I like about Sidekick as someone providing PD is I can see you all right here in my Sidekick um, uh, dashboard. And so I can kind of see where you're at and what you're doing. And I can actually click and see anyone's. This is my friend Molly who was testing for me yesterday. I can see the chat. So if I'm working with teachers or I'm working with students, that gives me an ability to see what they're doing and how they're processing, and meet them where they need to be and kind of be a personalized facilitator. And then my I like School AI because you don't actually have to put any like identifying information. Like you can have the kids put initials, they can put a nickname, they don't have to type their full name as long as you can identify them. So there's no login requirement for that, which is really nice. So, all right, so that's one. And here's the other one, the cheating, right? So I think the other discussion I often have when I'm talking about fears with teachers is this idea of like, what's cheating, what's not cheating now. And I love Matt Miller. If you haven't spent any time with Ditch That Textbook, he's amazing. He has a really accessible book. I have it linked at the end. Boop, if I can get it. There we go. AI for Educators. But this is his graphic. And I love that he tries to start thinking about cheating on a spectrum as opposed to a binary. I think a lot of times, and I'm an English teacher by trade, so a lot of times it's easy to think about like, did you cut and paste this from the internet or not, right? Kind of this binary, but instead thinking about what is the balance on the spectrum of AI versus student generated, right? And what in this assignment, this class, this school constitutes an inappropriate use or an appropriate use. And I think just having some of those more professional conversations with educators and getting them to think on this spectrum as opposed to a binary, like all student versus all AI, and that's the only two options. There's a lot in the middle. And I think we need to kind of like start thinking about, okay, where do we draw that line? And I would say as a classroom, as a school, as an assignment, right? So this is one graphic that I really like. I pulled this off of his Ditch That Textbook website. And I have also had teachers do an activity, which I've given you here, and I think it works for any level, right? To think about looking at some sources, and these are all linked about cheating, AI, student use, and then have them in a great breakout room think about like, what do my assessments need to look at in this world? How does this directly apply to my classroom? What am I comfortable with or not comfortable with? How do I want to talk about use or not use in terms of this spectrum? And I've given some questions here is like, well, how do you know what your students know? Right? Like what's the goal behind your assessments? What are you looking for? How do you know? What are you testing for or looking for in this particular assignment? What kind of ways do you need to kind of rethink or process assessment in a different way. And I find this to be a pretty productive discussion. And giving them some resources where they kind of pick something to read, kind of gives them a different modality and allows them to kind of process and think about things in a more kind of applicable way and then partner. And I find this to be a really useful kind of way to approach that cheating question. Any questions so far? Please feel free to put them in the chat. I have like 3 monitors, so I'm happy. I'm like kind of watching the chat for you over here. And so I'm trying to make eye contact as much as possible, but please feel free to ask me questions. And this genially does not ever have to close. Um, and so you all can re-access this at any point, and all the links in the Genially are accessible. I will pop that link back in here for you. I didn't send these out as pre-reading, mostly because I'm wanting to show you the activity. Oh, but if I'm doing a like a session, it depends on how long my PD is. Kara, is that what you were asking about? Yeah. It depends on how I'm structuring so if it's just a session where we're talking about cheating in AI, then I probably would send them out as pre-reading and then have them get into small groups. If it's a larger thing and I'm teaching for like a bigger period of time with educators, I will often like, this is a nice break where they can take some quiet reading time and they're not they're not having to kind of be absorbing someone talking at them or each other. And so sometimes it's helpful if they have those resources to read in the moment because it gives them that different modality. So it just kind of depends on my time frame. But there's so many articles coming out all the time that can be really like this, you could change these out. I love the Ditch That Textbook blog. I think he's fabulous. He's got lots of great energy too. I think you can kind of flex this one a lot. One thing we're working on in my school right now is a system where we color code assignments like red light, no AI, yellow, there's a blend, green, free for all, so that like kids know immediately what color the assignment is, so they know what they can use or not use. All right. So this is something else I created in Genially, which is an interactive activity that and the name that you type in is just my analytics. So you can type whatever name you want, that's fine. But this is a kind of interactive board that shows students and teachers how to cite AI according to APA and MLA. And I find that with teachers too, when they're worried about cheating, if we can frame it as a source, if we can frame it as like, this is a source students are using, just like if they Googled something, right? Now we're asking them to own the use, which allows us to process differently, right? Because if students are saying, I'm using AI as a source, now we're not just replacing ourselves, we're seeing it as a component of that research. And so I find having a way for students and teachers to kind of access like the rules for source use can be really helpful for them to be like, oh, this is a path forward. I can do this with my students. So I created this. Again, this link, and I'll put it separately in as well, will not go away. So this is this is just for the citation link. But this one you can access as much as you want as well. And I have a direct link to the MLA guide for citing generative AI and for the APA. So that gives you direct access to those. And I find that this kind of can settle some of those fears a little bit too, because we're framing AI around a source and a tool as opposed to just a replacement. Okay. All right. This is a really fun activity. I do another waterfall usually with this one. This is Matt Miller. If you want to link directly to his blog, it's right underneath his name. But I love this quote. Like, we cannot look at at the world with today's glasses for the sake of our students. We have to use tomorrow's glasses. And I love to just ask teachers to like go in the chat and tell me, what are tomorrow's glasses? What do those look like? What do we have to be thinking about? What do we have to be like processing? What does it look like to put on tomorrow's glasses? Because I think just framing around students becomes really helpful. So I love this quote. I love this idea of having them kind of process tomorrow's classes. Okay, so I've given you like some tools that I've used and kind of talked a little bit about principles of PD, but I want to kind of really name that for you. So we've got boring PD versus exciting PD, right? So right now I've been talking at you and we're kind of on Zoom, but I'm trying to get interactivity as much as I can. But like sit and get PD for educators, they don't want that, right? They don't want to learn irrelevant information. They don't want to have no way to apply it and to see it in their own context. Um, Instead, they want something that's going to activate their knowledge or require them to participate. They are going to try to use teaching and working context to apply these things immediately. Where can I do this with my students, right? It should be something that provides bite-sized takeaways, right? And like places where you could push for more depth. And it should be active, right? And so here are kind of my approaches to trying to teach hesitant teachers about AI. And again, you can click on these numbered images and they'll pop up a window that describes each. But number one, AI needs to be approachable. When I'm teaching AI, I need to think about what do teachers need? How can it meet their need without a ton of training? One of the big things about hesitant teachers is they don't have a lot of time. So can I provide them something that saves them time? Can I give them something that they can apply immediately that's going to make their lives better and easier? Um, where is AI already in their life? I think is really important. And how can we connect the AI skills that students are going to need to skills that they already have in their present day learning goals, right? I think about critical thinking as like my number one. I need to be able to critically evaluate AI as a source. I already am teaching my students about critical thinking. Now I'm teaching it in a different context, right? But that is something as a teacher, I already know critical thinking. Now I just am critically thinking about a different source. So rooting it into things that they're already really confident or capable in. I think the other one is like, this is about our students. Like, do we want our students to fall behind? They have to have AI literacy skills. Like, this is a new avenue for literacy. And so, can I give them a tool that helps them develop those literacy skills? And can I do it in a way that shows them the value of that for their students? Yeah. And so, root it in that, activate that. We're teachers because we love our students and we want them to succeed. So let's help them succeed, right? I also think we don't need to overwhelm them with all sorts of information about the back end of AI. If they're interested, they'll ask, but they don't need to know what a foundational model is or about Black Mamba that is now, potentially the new LLM model that takes up less space. Like their eyes are going to glaze over, especially the hesitant ones, right? And so we've got to kind of give them what they need. And then if they want more, we can offer that opportunity. But if we start there, we're going to lose them. Okay. Give them time to try and apply it to their context or their needs. So get out of the way, right? This is why I like some of those discussions or those readings, or that like, here's something to think about. Now I want you to kind of talk about it or play with it, or how would this look in your context? I love to, if I'm in person, seat them in like shared clusters of people that are in kind of a similar discipline, so they can like work together and collaborate. And then we've done a little bit of this, right? But this name it to tame it, right? What are their fears and hesitations? What funds of knowledge do they already have? Be honest about the limitations and dilemmas. Don't sugarcoat them and don't be a toxic salesperson. There are things we have to think about with AI that are dangerous and a little scary and potentially really problematic. We got to own it. And we got to be honest about it and let them talk it through, right? We have to be able to name those fears. We can't stay in the fear space, but we can't ignore the fear space either. It has to be owned. I love, if you haven't seen the Turning Red, that's a great movie too. It's really fun. Reminds me of my 9.5-year-old. All right. So just so you have a sense that like I'm not just some lady who's um, talking about PD. I actually do this. So this is a series of emojis that I got on my most recent AI PD with educators ranging from our fear and hesitant to our early adopters. When I asked them to waterfall, just like we did at the beginning. I super like the alien. I wasn't totally sure what the alien meant, but I liked the alien one. This little guy too, I think we definitely feel that like Homer Simpson backing into the bush, like please leave me alone kind of thing. But after the session, these are things that they said about the PD, right? So I haven't enjoyed a virtual PD this much ever. I had so much fun exploring everything. I almost didn't feel like we were Zooming. The resource is really great. This is so doable. So I think it does actually work. Like to go from like sweating, mind blown, scared, devil, I want to hide in a bush faces to people feeling like, hey, like I can manage this. Like I can do this. I think is really huge. And this was a range of teachers who have kindergartners all the way through 12th grade. So a wide range of educators with a wide range of students. All right, so sample activities. I've already given you a few. I'm going to give you some more. And then we'll probably take a couple minutes on some of them to actually try it out because that's always fun. Especially the prep and edit, I think are some of the most useful. And I get the best feedback with those. And those are coming out of Dan Fitzpatrick's book, which I've also linked. It's it's called the AI Classroom, but I have a link. I'll show you where the link is. All right. So this is great for the intro people because the intro people are terrified that AI is taking over the world, and they also use every single thing almost on this slide. And you can do this with like a poster and sticky notes. You could do this with Genially, which I have done. You can do it with a variety of things. But the way Genially works, these are draggable. So you can go on your Genially and like actually drag and try to guess what uses AI, right? So I have like very common tools here that are all AI. And I'll give you about a minute to kind of drag and decide what you think. And then I'll click the solution here in just a second. If you like to just know ahead of time, you can click the solution too. But if you want to play, you can play. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm gonna move us forward here in just a second, but I was a little tricky. Does anyone want to guess? You can unmute or pop into the chat. Um, what's the answer? Yes. Yes, you're right. And if you click the solution, it'll pop up, but they all use AI. Now, they're not all generative, so they're not all just writing essays or creating pictures, but they're all using AI, artificial intelligence. So I think for a lot of people, this starts to become something where they're like, oh, like my robot vacuum that I love uses it. I use Google Maps. I love when it reroutes me around traffic and construction, right? It is literally everywhere. And things that we really appreciate in our daily life are using AI. So it's not something that's as scary. It's actually something that we're used to and we enjoy using and find useful. It doesn't just have to be something that's like scary and replacing us, which I think can be really helpful. So that's a fun activity that you can do. You could do it like a Kahoot or a Gimkit too, where you're asking them to like play a quiz. You can kind of structure it however you want. I did it on Genially because I love this like drag feature. I think it's really fun. So that's that. Okay. This is, I feel like, my number one entry-level teacher AI tool. So it's free. Um, and Magic School, if I've got teachers who are going, I have no time, I need you to be like, I don't want to do this because I don't have any time. This bad boy right here, and if you click the picture, it'll actually take you to Magic School for signing up. But this bad boy is like my number one like um, go to for teachers because it can actually save them an immense amount of time. So one of the things I really like is it will create questions based on YouTube videos and transcripts. So if you go into the YouTube question generator, you tell them what grade your kids are in, you tell them the number of questions you want, what do I want, free response, multiple choice, true or false, and I pop in the YouTube link. I'm going to put an exemplar in because that's easier. And then it literally goes through and creates a multiple choice quiz for you. And then it gives you the answer key at the bottom and what minute that is in the video. And and I can copy this and put it wherever I want. And it's fully editable. So if you've got hesitant teachers, this bad boy, I think, is the number one way that they can start to see that it's useful and that it can actually save them time. Common misconceptions is another one that I really love. Let's do that with, they did it with 6th grade. So this is a math common misconceptions in terms of finding areas of triangles, quadrilaterals, and polygons. And it's got, right, like here's the misconception and here's how to address it. So this is a thought partner platform that can be really helpful as an entry level, especially with hesitant teachers, because this is about saving them time. And that's like one of the number one reasons they don't want to explore it. Okay. And they've got some really good training tools on there. So this is another one that's really awesome and helpful. Canva, obviously designed for all. I use this with my students in terms of giving them access to image generator. And it's free um, for um, for you to use as educators. And it has a whiteboard feature, much like Jamboard, RIP Jamboard, that allows you to kind of get in and work on a whiteboard frame. So this is another tool that I like to introduce because their Magic Studio is really entry level AI for people. It's not super overwhelming. This is another fun one that I like to do when we talk, and you can do this with students or with teachers, where they actually play around with what's the bot do that's different than what I do. So you can actually ask them to be the bot. So, I'm from Seattle, so I asked a bunch of Seattleites teachers, like, what are the top things to do in Seattle for someone who likes food and adventure? And then they all came up with all these ideas, and they said Canlis, which Yes, Canlis, amazing food. They talked about kayaking. They talked about going to Pike Place Market. They talked about down into the farm or wine tasting, hiking, Snoqualmie Falls. So they started listing things, and then and they typed them in here, and then I went in and typed their answers in that session here, and then we actually compared it to what ChatGPT came up with. And ChatGPT had like whole paragraphs, which was really interesting. And I also have the full response linked here as well. But it was interesting because none of us would have told people to go to the Sky City restaurant because it is not good food. Canlis is so much better. And if you want something that's less like fancy, Canlis is very fancy. There is a ton of really good food that's like pretty good priced. That's not the Sky City restaurant. Yeah, go to the Space Needle, but don't go to the restaurant. But it was interesting because ChatGPT thought, ooh, everyone will want to go to the Sky City restaurant. And so it's interesting to see how the humans kind of adjusted and compared. So this is kind of one that students can start to see what bots can do or not do. Teachers can see what bots can do or not do. And so getting in and playing with it can be really fun and helpful. So that's the Be the Bot activity. And then the next section, and this is the one I think I'll give you a chance to play with a little bit, is AI literacy is going to be about prompt engineering and evaluating AI sourcing. Like this is a new level of literacy. It's something that we need people to know. And so this framework is about prompt engineering, and you can have teachers try it. You can have students try it. Teachers can take this and work directly in a classroom with this. It's immediately applicable to helping them think about getting the bot to do what you want it to do. So prep is the first. This is about how I write the prompt, how I ask the AI for something. So I have to be clear and concise. The AI does not understand nuance, and it doesn't understand common sense. So we need to be clear and direct. It also has no emotion, so I can tell it it's being stupid and I want it to do something else, and I can ask the same question 10 times and it doesn't get mad because it has no feelings. So that's kind of nice. I like that. So you want to be clear and concise. You also want to give it a role. What does the AI know? What are its parameters? You can tell it to mimic a 5-year-old or a PhD. You get vastly different answers. So this is another way to talk to students and teachers about how do we understand audience when we're communicating? How do we ask for an understanding of audience? That roots directly in things they're already doing in humanities courses, right? If I want a tutor, I tell it to be a tutor. If I want a PhD level chemist, then I ask for that, right? But I can't, like, if I don't tell it who it is, it doesn't always give us what we're looking for. I need to be explicit, right? You're giving a student or an intern an assignment. We all know how well interns and students understand directions. Yes, like we have to be really clear, really exactly what you want them to produce. And then you also want to give it really clear like parameters or boundaries. Like, do I want the data in a table? Do I want it to have a certain sentiment? Do I want it to have a certain reading level, right, of content back? Do I want a certain length? Right? How many words do I want? How many paragraphs do I want? And so all of this becomes a skill set, right? Much like when we were teaching kids how to do Google searches, right? They had to learn Boolean phrases to do like research searching. This is the same idea. We're just taking that process of looking for what I need and framing it in a prompt engineering style. And so what I've done with teachers is I've asked them to do it. And so I'm going to let you have a second to do it. Come up with a prompt. So ask ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Gemini, Pick your favorite chat bot. Um, Magic School AI has a chatbot named Reina that you're welcome to use, but like ask it to create something for you. ChatGPT and my Bing Chat are linked on here for you if you want to. But you're going to use a verb and a noun to frame your prompt, give it a voice or a role. Be specific. What do you want it to include? And like, what's your format? Like, what's your like style that you want back. And I'm gonna check in a couple minutes and see how we're doing, because the next activity is going to be about how do I then look at that output and make it what I want it to be, which is the back end, the critical thinking piece. So let's say 51 in my time. All right, I know that was super quick. Thank you for your framing with pace. If you want to pop whatever you asked for in the PD reflection or idea board, feel free. That will stay open as well. But what the next thing that I have them do, I love this quote, AI tools can be thought of as 1,000 interns. They need really explicit instructions. Sometimes you need to tell them again in different words, and you have to check their output, but they can save you a lot of time. um, and so I think that's the next kind of major step, is to think about how can I edit, right? How can I edit output to make it useful and authentic to myself? And you should never just take output from an AI verbatim. And so this is, I think, a skill that works to teach teachers. And I think this is immediately applicable with their students in their classroom, verbatim. So you need to evaluate, right? Like look for the implicit statements, the explicit statements within what the output has produced. You're looking for main idea and structure, purpose and audience, sources, logic, tone. This is all like reading literacy immediately, right? So these like what I'm looking for in the output are very similar to what's already something we're doing in the classroom. We're just doing it with a different source. And so that can be a bridge, I think, for a lot of those hesitant teachers. We then need to determine what's accurate. AI hallucinates. It's getting slightly better, but it hallucinates and it's filled with societal and textual bias because of its data source. And so we need to think about what's factual, what can I corroborate, where can I go find and verify the accuracy of the statements that it's making. And our students need to do that. And our teachers need to do that. And so this is the kind of second step, is to really do the work of corroborating what you're getting. And then we need to identify the data and the societal bias, looking for it. I love image searches asking for teachers. They almost always look like me and not other people, which is, I think, a problem. So we need to be looking at that. It's trained on human sources, and we have explicit and implicit bias, and the data does. And so the kids and the adults need to kind of really be thinking about what is that, and then how can we adjust the output to like pivot away from that bias. And then the last thing we need to do is transform. AI output needs human evaluation and adjustment. AI is an augmentation, should be an augmentation of what we can do, not a replacement. And so this is where students and teachers have a really clear framework to look at what they're getting from the AI and to put that human collaboration on it. And I think this is a really practical way to kind of think about bridging for teachers and students into a much more appropriate tool use, as opposed to a replacement use, which I think is what we're mostly fearful of with cheating and education around AI. I've included the graphics from the AI classroom, and I've also included here like the actual publication information, and I have a link to where you can purchase the AI classroom if you like it. But that is, I find, a really useful book for this framework. And what I have teachers do is actually go in and look at the output that they just got and evaluate it. Use the edit framework. Look at, okay, what did I get? Where are the factual statements? Are they accurate? Sometimes when I'm asking about something where I'm a professional expert, I know the accuracy without having to corroborate with an outside source. But sometimes I'm like, ooh, I'm not so sure. I need to look that up. Was there bias? Try to get an image generator, make someone look average looking. It's hilarious. They don't. And then if you tell them you want someone ugly, they look skeletal, like they're like from like the Crypt Keeper or whatever from a horror movie. Like AI image generators struggle to make like average looking people. And then play around with transforming it. How could I adjust the tone here? How could I make the language sound more like myself, more human, more how I would say it? And so actually like playing with that output becomes a really immediately applicable framework. All right, I'm getting close, I promise. This is another activity that you can do with teachers, which is just thinking through, these are job skills for an AI future from Microsoft. And you can talk about, well, where do I already teach this? Where can I just pivot instead of having to totally transform, right, to include AI? I've also then asked Copilot to define them and cite its sources so that you can kind of, they can play around with looking at, where is this information coming from and how can AI kind of help with some of these. But again, like flexibility, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, those are things we're already caring about. It's now just adding a layer instead of changing wholesale, which I find to help with accessibility. I also like to make personas. So I've given you 3 personas, and teachers can actually immediately play with these. I love a literary or historical persona one where you can tell the AI it's Victor Frankenstein and the kids can interview Victor Frankenstein, which is really fun. You can also make it a tutor or a study guide or study partner, where kids can kind of have someone to as a thought partner. The sidekick that I gave you all earlier is one that does that in a little bit more of a safe environment where you're not as worried about data privacy issues, if rather than like GPT or a more like OpenAI or Copilot. And again, like reminding them it's not going to save the world and it's not going to ruin the world. There's like a balance in the middle. That's really important. Okay. That was a lot. I wanted you to have all the things. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry I talked for so long. This is my LinkedIn profile. This is a link to email me. You're welcome to use both of those. I have my own feedback form, but on this last one, this is their feedback that they asked me to put on. If you're in the Genially, you should be able to just click the image and it'll pop. It's a linked image. And then for those of you, I'm going to come back to this slide. Just give me 1 second. This is a link with all sorts of resources. So this is the AI Classroom, which has the prep and edit frameworks. This is Matt Miller's AI for Educators. That's the cheating spectrum. This is an AI foundational credential if you're interested. AI 101 for Teachers with Code.org is also really helpful. This is Microsoft's Learn platform for AI, and then ISTE obviously has quite a lot as well. So those are all linked resources for you. And again, the Genially will be up indefinitely, so you can use that link, and I'll pop it in the chat again to access any of these in your own time whenever you want. Okay, that was a lot. Thank you all for your patience and your investment. I really appreciate it. I can stay on for a little bit if you have any questions or want to ask me anything. I'm here.